Don, Aiden wants to know how many times does he have to throw on Friday to beat the Huskers?
More than 14, I promise.
You want to take a stab at it? Does he need to throw it 25 times? Probably not. They should be able to win. They should be able to win this game, knock on wood. Home game against a Husker team that has already clinched bowl eligibility. I would think that this rushing attack, if they play it apart, they've had games like the UCLA game where they just totally lay an egg on the ground. But if that offensive line, Joe Moore, semifinalists or whatever they are, can run the ball effectively, he should not have to throw for more than 20.
Well, I think it's entirely possible we'll need to throw more than 20 times to beat Nebraska.
Well,
maybe not. It's entirely possible, yeah. You know, the bottom line, I don't think there's any way we're going to run through Nebraska like we ran through Maryland. I think Nebraska's front seven is better than Maryland's.
Okay.
And I'm no expert on Nebraska, but I've seen them play enough to have that kind of general sense that we're not going to be able to run the ball down their throat. I don't think.
And Space Boy wants to know, can we beat Nebraska without passing over 100 yards? Have not passed 100 for 2 straight games, and that's become a habit, not just this season, but in recent years. Now, circumstances are different. I understand this year the circumstances are different. They got a dominant run game that they can lean on, and they've had a ton of injury problems at quarterback. Cade was hurt last year, but they also didn't really have a consistent rushing attack all year long. They had certain games where they'd knock off some big ones. But, yeah, I mean, what's the number? How many passing yards do you need against Nebraska? I know it's probably a harder question than asking you how many rush yards they need.
Yeah, there's so many variables to that. I'll put it this way. If we don't throw for 150, that'll probably be a concern because my guess is we're going to have to throw the ball certainly more than 14 times. I wouldn't be surprised at all if we throw 20-something times. So 20 attempts, 150 yards, that's 7.5 yards per attempt. Assuming none of those are intercepted, that's not a bad average. 7.5 yards per pass attempt. That would hold up pretty well against most teams. And that's assuming that you're able to run the ball to complement that passing game that you do have.
I keep thinking that we should run some sort of play action fake with Caleb Johnson in the backfield going deep. And we don't ever seem to do that because the defense has got to be keen on Caleb, don't they?
Well, they're not. Well, this is a question for Don, but real quick, can I just say they're not really throwing play action much at all.
Well, that's true.
I mean,
but yeah.
I think the quarterback situation has been so up and down. Like, you don't even, from game to game, who's playing, right? For how many straight weeks now? Four straight games or whatever it's been. So I think that's kind of part of it. But I agree, certainly with Jackson's arm, Don, against Nebraska, let it fly.
Or are they keeping that in their pocket for one last game?
Well, they have one last game.
Yeah.
Well, most of the play action that involves a fake to Caleb Johnson would be what they were describing on TV as a mid-zone scheme. You know, we're running for some width with the ball, typically at the tight end's position or imaginary tight end, or maybe a little tighter along the path that went into the tackle's original alignment. And with that wider path on the part of the back, the best play action in general that we've used with good effectiveness is naked. You know, we would naked away. We made 14 yards with a naked. I believe that was a naked thrown yesterday, wasn't it, to Orwood? I think that was a naked. I have to check my notes. What did Orwood catch? Didn't he have a 14-yarder, Cory, or am I crazy?
I thought
I tried in a 14-yard reception.
That was a stringer, wasn't
it? Was a stringer.
Yeah, stringer.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, it was a stringer, yes.
Wasn't that a naked? I think it was a naked.
Yes.
May have been.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, it
Yeah.
was.
Yeah, so the problem, you know, the very best play actions that we used to have, but we were in the center, and of course the running back was lined up at maybe 8 yards depth, and he's got time to run downhill at the line of scrimmage, and of course that gives those safeties a little more time to commit to the run, and that's why you used to see us with play action post a lot of the time because the safeties were caught too low and couldn't recover in time. So it would be more effective to fake and stay in the pocket and throw the ball if we were taking the ball off the line of scrimmage, from a direct snap. The problem there's not a lot of problems with shotgun, but one problem is the play action doesn't have the same great effect as if you take the ball from the line of scrimmage, you're taking it back to the running back who's lined up in the eye. And so you have a chance to really affect a good fake, and the play takes a little bit longer. The play action would buy you more time and give you a better chance to beat the safeties over the top. I would say that. That's one reason you don't see a lot of play action down the field from us, is because we run so much outside zone, or what they were calling mid zone, a little wider path by the back. And if we start off with that kind of width on the fake, then even if we are underneath the center, then we typically use naked away. To get our.
That's one of the reasons we have you here, Don. You just explained something that 90% of the fan base probably would not have been able to explain. So,
well, that's one thing I used to like about being underneath the center, is you had a chance to really come up with some good play action.
Right, he's gone. James says, how many yards does Iowa need against Nebraska to beat them? Any idea there, Don?
I'd say it this way: we need to outrush Nebraska and then some, because I think there's an excellent chance that Nebraska might throw for more yards than us. Probably will. But they'll also probably have more pass attempts. Here's one thing that'll surprise you when you look at the Nebraska-Wisconsin stats. The more effective passing game was actually Wisconsin. Nebraska, I think, threw for a few more yards, but I think they had 38 attempts compared to Wisconsin's 30 attempts. Based on yards per attempt, Wisconsin had the more efficient pass offense than Nebraska.
David, we appreciate you being a premium subscriber here from the Hawkeye of the Storm. 20 degrees at kickoff, he says. Don, are you going to be there? I'm sure you will.
I will absolutely be there, and I won't miss 1 minute of the game. And I will be properly dressed.
You will be properly dressed. Iowa, Nebraska kicking off at 6:30 on NBC. Let's go to our final Iowa Smokehouse caller of the day.
And by the way, Cory, I'll be out in the crowd. I will not be up in the box. I'll be out in the crowd.
Super chat from Erica. Did Nebraska look good because they played a horrible Wisconsin team, or should we really be concerned?
Well, I think the Wisconsin fans would tell you that they're a little bit of a hot mess right now. I say that simply because Phil Longo loses his job a couple of weeks ago, and they're trying to salvage a disappointing season. Correct me if I'm wrong, Cory. They're 5-6 right now. Is that right?
That sounds right. Yeah, I believe you're right.
I think they were both 5-5.
They got to win this.
So they got to win. Otherwise, they might be a bowl team at 5-7, I guess, because we can't fill bowl teams with just 6-6 teams. I guess we got to go 5-7 in a few spots.
Obviously,
that's another problem. Too many bowl games.
Too many bowl games. As they become less and less relevant, we just keep adding more bowl games. That makes a lot of sense. I think the last thing, Tekun says, what are your keys to beat Nebraska on Friday, Don? Final thoughts on the big Black Friday showdown, senior night in Kinnick Stadium this coming Friday.
Well, I haven't done the analytics from this past weekend. I've looked at them, glanced at them, but in short summary, one of the things we need to do, Nebraska's been notorious for not taking care of the details. You heard me say one of the nice things about Iowa is normally if you beat us, we make you have to beat us. Nebraska, as you know, Cory, last year and even this year to some degree, has shot themselves in the foot quite a bit. So first thing comes to mind, let's find a way to force Nebraska to make some mistakes. They do have a freshman quarterback. Yes, he's got a bright future, but isn't he a little more likely to make mistakes than a more veteran quarterback would? The answer is obvious, yes, that's true. Other places where he could gain an edge is our defense maybe more opportunistic than Nebraska's. I'd like to think so. I think it's probably safe to say we probably have more experience on defense than they do. I don't know that for a fact, but we have good experience in our starting lineup, of course. We do have the home field advantage. I think this is critical. We have to have a great home field advantage, and the players alone don't get that done the fans have so much to do with that. I know it's going to be hard on a cold night. We got to bundle up and we got to find a way to make a lot of noise in the course of the game. Let's be sure that Kinnick advantage is there, as it almost always is. And let's recognize those players deserve that kind of support out of our crowd in this senior day. These seniors will never again get to play in Kinnick Stadium. Let's send them off on the right note. And that's a responsibility that every last fan should embrace. Having said all that, I'd like to win on turnovers. We should be able to get that done. Nebraska historically has turned the ball over more than we have. Hope that continues this next Friday night. And then beyond that, to help knowing who we are, we need to certainly outrush Nebraska. We should get that done. And that'll, of course, give us a better chance to shorten the game and keep their offense off the field more than maybe what they'd like to be out there. If you snap the ball 75 times, you got a better chance to make big plays than if you only snap it 60. That only makes sense, of course. And but that's just stuff off the top of my head, of course. It's not based on a lot of analytics yet. I haven't really done a deep dive on, and just to give you an idea of what I do, Cory, this time of the year, I do what I call a bowl evaluation on both teams. And so you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to look at every conference game played by Nebraska, every conference game played by Iowa, and then I'm going to start looking how many of these 25 parameters that I address, how many of them, are there any of them that might be, right now we both played 8 conference games, right? You're talking about 16 games. Are there any of those parameters that are 16 for 16? And all I'm saying is, are any of them 100% win if you win the parameter? That's an indication you better win that parameter. Maybe there is, maybe not. I'm going to figure it all out, and I'm going to share that information with Iowa, and I hope Nebraska didn't have anybody that's that involved to do the same thing on their side. Even if they are, I don't think they know as much about analytics as I do. So advantage is still to Iowa. That sounds like I'm shooting my own horn. I'm sorry, but I just take my work very seriously. I think you know that.
There's a reason why your name is in the title of this show. So just remember that. Iowa, Nebraska, Friday, under the lights, Kinnick Stadium, Black Friday, Game 12, 6:30 p.m. Central Time on NBC, and it will be fun. It will be less boring than the 11 a.m. game in College Park that we watched yesterday.